We are now live on YouTube.
So we're officially live. I'm going to hand everything over to our host for the day. And I wanted to thank you all again for participating and joining us. And it's going to be a great event. So let's kick it off.
Norbert, did you want to kind of introduce the event quickly? I know you wanted to say a few words.
Yeah, so thank you everyone for joining us today. My name is Norbert. I'm the president of the Anesthesia Interest Group here at New York Medical College. We're going to be joined with Dr. Abramowicz, Dr. Mahoney, and Dr. Romanelli to discuss their programs. We host 3 events every year. This is our second event. The next event will be on September 20th for anyone who's interested, and I'll discuss this more at the end of the event. So Joanna, if you want to provide with introductions and proceed with the event, take the floor.
Thanks, Norbert. Hey, everyone. I'm Joanna Abramowicz. I'm a 4th-year medical student at New York Medical College. I'm applying anesthesia, and I serve as the M4 advisor on the Anesthesia Interest Group e-board here at New York Medical College. I just wanted to say good evening to everyone, to our guest panelists, and to all our prospective anesthesiology residency applicants viewing on our YouTube live stream. Today, I'm joined by my colleague, Charanpreet Sasson, our VP, and we're excited to host our second panel in our series of 3 anesthesiology residency application virtual forums. For those joining us for the first time, we hope to provide applicants with information about the application process, learn more about the wonderful anesthesiology residency programs joining us today, and answer many of the questions that you may have about the upcoming application cycle. So before we start, I want to thank our guests for joining us. We're joined today by our own Dr. Apollonia Abramowicz, Westchester Medical Center Residency Program Director. We're also joined by Dr. Brian Mahoney, Mount Sinai Morningside-West Program Director, and Montefiore Program Director, Dr. Eric Romanelli. We also have some of their residents joining us today. From Westchester, we have Dr. John V. Banzel and Dr. Jonas Harley. From Mount Sinai Morningside-West, we have Dr. Jordan Abrams and Dr. Sai Pentiala. And from Montefiore, Dr. Lucas Smith. I also wanted to thank our faculty advisors, Dr. Abramowicz and Dr. Weber, who have supported us behind the scenes to be able to run these virtual forums, as well as our events throughout the year. Now I'll pass it over to Charanpreet for some logistics.
Hi, everyone. Like Joanna said, my name is Charanpreet Sasson. I'm also an M4 student here at NYMC, and I serve as the vice president of the NYMC Anesthesiology Interest Group this year. We invite all of our participants now to join us on slido.com with the access link #NYMC-AIG, where you can ask questions and vote on which questions you'd like us to ask this panel today. A link is provided in the description below. Please note, though we will try our best, we may not get to all the questions posted on Slido, and we will try our best to cover new questions as they come in that haven't been asked yet. Before we get started, I'd now like to give each program director 2 to 3 minutes to introduce themselves, their resident physicians joining them, and provide a brief overview of their respective programs before we go into our submitted questions. So we can just start off with Dr. Abramowicz and then rotate through Dr. Mahoney and then Dr. Romanelli, and then go from there.
Good evening. It's really a pleasure. This started as an initiative of the AIG at New York Medical College in 2020. That was a very, very strange and awfully frightening year. I'm very glad that we can continue this tradition because there are some advantages to this format in that we program directors have no idea who's there and who's listening and who's asking what questions. So there's a lot of kind of freedom in how you approach your ability to find out more about us. Now, as far as the program itself, this program was accredited in 1969, but it was primarily known as the New York Medical College Anesthesiology Residency Program. And about 6 years ago or so, the program has become known as the Westchester Medical Center Program because the sponsoring institution is the hospital. But we have a long-term affiliation with the New York Medical College, and we share the campus with New York Medical College, and we're all here faculty at New York Medical College. The residency, since I started here and I worked somewhere else before, has expanded, doubled in size. So we're now accredited for 52 residents, up from about 28 when I came. We have 3 fellowships currently, cardiac anesthesia, regional anesthesia, and pain management. We are fully categorical. So I want to introduce Janvi Banzal. Janvi, hi. Janvi is one of our interns, and she's a graduate of Stony Brook Renaissance Medical School. Thank you, Janvi, for attending. And we have also Jonas Harley. Jonas is the chief resident in charge of scheduling, so I call him the important one. We have Robert Sutter, who is actually not able to join us today. We have two chief residents per year. Now, what I wanted to add very quickly is that, you have to understand who we are. I think we pride ourselves in the fact that we are a level 1, both pediatric and adult trauma center and a big burn center. And essentially, we are a referral and transfer center. So it's a little bit of a crazy place where, patients fly in by helicopter, and in the summers, it could be 2, 3 in the air at the same time. And so it is a big acuity, a lot of fun, and a lot of unpredictability. So we welcome people who don't mind their schedule changing during the course of the day, again and again, as the emergencies unfold. And that's all I want to say for now, and I'm looking forward to all the questions.
I think it's my turn. Thank you guys for having us. Pardon me. Dr. Abramowicz did some history lessons. I guess I should do some history too. We're also a very long-standing hospital. Our hospitals are 2 main hospitals called Mount Sinai, Morningside-West. Mount Sinai, or Infinite Wisdom, replaced the better names we previously had, which were the St. Luke's and Roosevelt Hospital Centers. If that name Roosevelt rings a bell, it's because this was founded by money from the Roosevelt family. They were pissed when they changed the name. I agree with them. So yes, Teddy Roosevelt, Franklin Roosevelt, that family founded the hospital. More history. I have plenty of history. Teddy Roosevelt received his last treatment before dying in this hospital. And John Lennon is supposed to have died in this hospital. He probably died en route to this hospital as well. Like I said, we are 2 hospitals. Mount Sinai-West, formerly Roosevelt, which is at the bottom of Central Park near Columbus Circle. And then Mount Sinai Morningside, which is the top of Central Park near the Columbia University campus. What are we known for? Well, the best residents in the city. But besides that, we do a lot of regional anesthesiology, and our people are great with ultrasound. But I'm not fun to talk to. I want my chief residents to introduce themselves. Dr. Jordan Abrams.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. I'm Jordan. I'm a CA3 resident here. And next year I'll be going on to pursue a fellowship in OB anesthesia at Stanford. I have only positive things to say about this program, and if I could do it all over again, I would pick this as my top choice again.
He has to say that because I'm sitting next to him. Our other chief resident, one of our 3, the third is getting married soon, is Dr. Sai Pentiala. Please, Dr. Pentiala, tell them about yourself.
Hello, everyone. I'm also, like Jordan, a chief resident, a CA3 in our program. I actually went to New York Medical College myself. Yes. So I represent both the schools, 2 of 3 schools here. I love our program. I also love New York Medical College and Westchester. I will be doing a fellowship in regional anesthesia next year at Hospital for Special Surgery. And I, like Jordan, without Dr. Mahoney next to me, would also choose my program again if I had to do it over again.
If Dr. Harley's audio is working, would you like to tell us 2 words about yourself, where you're from, and how you wound up at Westchester, where you're going next year?
Of course. So can everybody hear me okay?
Yes, we
Okay,
can hear you.
good. Excellent. Thank you. So yeah, I'm originally from Oklahoma. Obviously, I worked very hard to eliminate the accent. That's what I tell everybody. But I really wanted to train in a very high acuity setting where I would feel very confident being on my own and handling any emergencies, anything that came my way. So obviously, I landed here, very happy about it, would definitely choose it again. Dr. Abramowicz is nowhere near me, so I can say that without any fear of retaliation. But next year I'm going to Duke for a perioperative medicine fellowship. It attracted me in terms of leadership, management, administration. And so there were plenty of opportunities to go into any field with that, with the mentors available at Westchester. And that's what I'm excited to do next year.
I understand there will be questions for John Lee later, right? Because she's the representative of the 13 interns we have now in the building.
Dr. Romanelli.
Oh, great. Hi. So my name is Eric Romanelli. I am the current program director over at Montefiore Medical Center up in the Bronx. I want to thank first everyone from NYMC for putting this together. I know Dr. Abramowicz briefly from our time together at Monty, and I'm getting to know Dr. Mahoney pretty well. He's been a really valued resource since I became program director at Monty since this past July. I've been on faculty at Monty since 2018. I'm a former resident alum, so I feel really invested in our program, and I've seen, over the years how residents who graduate through our program really reap the benefits of, the training that they get here, which is really strong. We invite about 17 residents each year into our program, 11 categorical and 6 advanced. We have several fellowships in OB, regional, peds, cardiac. We have a neuroanesthesia fellowship and an advanced airway fellowship as well. And we're in the process of developing a critical care fellowship as well. Some things that are really great about us, we're a level 4 regional perinatal center, so a referral center for all the really high risk, high acuity OB cases in the Bronx, in Westchester, even parts of Manhattan are referred, and we're also an Accreta center as well. To give you some history, the program's been accredited since 1960. We are part of the largest health system in the Bronx. Monty encompasses about 11 hospitals, and I think about somewhere in the range of like 180 locations throughout the Bronx, Westchester. It's the mission of Monty is very much, rooted in, taking care of underserved populations, who have had, poor access to care, and, we're dealing with things with like low health literacy. And so, and this is something I'm sure we'll speak about more, but, I think that's part of the advantage of training in a program like ours. I'll also mention Gertie Marks trained here, and we developed Fioricet, the medication that is used usually for post-dural puncture headache. So as in Montefiore, Fioricet. And my chief resident, Lucas Smith, is joining us right now. I don't know if he wants to say a few words. I think he's driving right now. But go ahead, Lucas.
Hey, Dr. Romanelli, I'm parked. Good to be with everybody. My name is Lucas Smith, originally from the West Coast, ended up doing medical school and residency out here in New York State. So I have found my home here in the Bronx. I've been really happy with the training I've received and the mentorship I've received. Montefiore really does provide you with a wide scope of all the things that an anesthesiologist can run into, from very little, very sick kids all the way up to, hip fractures, or even things like accretas, or complicated thoracic procedures, which is what I just got done doing today. So happy to be here with you all and excited to answer your question.
Thank you so much for introducing yourselves, your programs, and your residents. So now we can start off with our questions. To start off, I have our first question of the evening for our panelists. What about your program are you most proud of? Are there any areas that you've identified that may not be as strong and you are working towards improving? And just to change it up a little bit, we can now start with Dr. Mahoney.
Thank you. I'm most proud of my residents. I think that when people come to our program, visit our program, we've established a great culture that's reflected in the behavior of the residents. Sometimes we have meetings and I tell them I don't deserve you guys. You really raise the morale. They act as role models, honestly, for the faculty sometimes when we're going through hard times. And I think that culture is bred through people who care about one another. Some of it's structural. We have a smaller program. We have the smallest class size in Manhattan and probably one of the smallest faculty groups of all the New York City programs. There was actually more than one question. It was two. The second part was, where can we improve? Every residency program has areas in which they're trying to make up for weaknesses. You know, you build a residency program in a healthcare system and they're all different. In Manhattan, unlike Montefiore, and by the way, they're not lying, great case mix at Montefiore. Anything you need is in their healthcare system. The rest of the hospitals in New York are playing a bit of a game where we're really good at one thing and other hospitals great at another thing. So all of us are trying to balance out what we're strong or weak in. In our hospital, you do a ton of regional. You're going to have all the blocks you need maybe before you can start your CA 1 year. But we don't do a lot of peds in-house. So our residents go outside hospital, Children's Hospital in New York for peds. Our residents go, Jordan just came back. Where'd you come from today?
From Memorial Sloan Kettering.
What are you doing there?
I'm doing a month of thoracic anesthesia.
So here in Manhattan and kind of more broadly, I happen to know Jonas. I worked with him today on labor and delivery. He's doing some OB with us. We play well together in the sandbox in New York City. The goal is to train great residents. We're actually all on the same team. No one here is my competitor. We support one another. I'll even call someone and say, this is a great resident for your program. They call me and say, this is a great resident for your program. So we're all filling those gaps with one another. It's one of the things that you see in a lot of the New York City programs. If Jonas wanted to get everything on one site, he should have stayed in Oklahoma. I'm sure they're doing everything there.
Very true.
There's not too much for me. Sai, do you have anything to add before someone else answers?
I think just the same thing. I think the opportunity that we get to rotate at other programs is actually, it opens your eyes as to the quality of training other people are getting, areas that you can improve in, and things like that. And I think rotating and seeing other hospitals and seeing how they operate, everyone has different practices. And I feel like our attendings, all people that trained at Mount Sinai, the East Side Hospital, have certain ways of doing things. And when you go to different hospitals and see all these different things, I feel like my overall learning experience has been more enriched because of that.
Thank you very much. Dr. Abramowicz?
I honestly am talking about what I am most proud of. I am really most proud of the quality of our grads. And I can tell you that I'm a pretty discerning person in many areas of life. And on pedantic side and very demanding of myself and others. And pretty much I'll let anybody that graduates from this program take care of me. And, I know them very well. So that's saying a lot. And I think that comes from a variety of things. But of course, we choose the best residents. Our culture attracts, the most fun people. And we have people from about currently 16 states in the nation. So that tells you a little bit about, despite the geographic preferences. So it's kind of an interesting twist on who we are. But generally speaking, I think in terms of strengths and weaknesses, I think the diversity is a big strength. We have people who came from the military. They're in their early 40s. We just graduated somebody who's a farmer's son from North Dakota. I mean, people learn stuff, by hanging out with colleagues who have a completely different life experience. So that's one. And then a final one, which I will tell you, is that we did have a big weakness, and that was the volume of OB cases, because we did about 900 cases. And this year we're up to 1,400. I don't know if you know, but we're just putting up a new building, $240 million building in front of the hospital. That's going to expand the ICUs to 125 beds. There'll be single beds, and they can be converted to either ICU or private hospital beds, getting ready for the next pandemic. I guess that's the mission. And as a result of that, our OB volume is going to go up because the ICUs are freeing up space. The old ICUs where the equipment barely fits for the expansion of OB. And other than that, we send our residents to a smaller community hospital. Unfortunately, it's a high about 34 miles from here, 40-minute drive. They have a house there for the residents. They can stay there for the duration of the rotation. That's where they learn, kind of the bread and butter stuff, because we don't do a lot of here. And I asked Jonas how many cataract dates he's had until now, and he told me one. He thinks that's enough to be an expert cataractologist. But anyway, so the elective stuff happens, a lot of it, sort of basic stuff happens in the Danbury Hospital, the community hospital, ambulatory cases, fast throughput. And I think that's a little bit of a weakness here also, is that, we do have disruption, and you don't necessarily learn what fast throughput means. And that's about it for now.
Thank you very much. And Dr. Romanelli.
Thanks again. So I'd say what I'm really most proud of, what ultimately develops throughout the residency program for our trainees, and that's bringing them into our communal mission to taking care of the Bronx community, who again are a disadvantaged population who many times are often presenting very far into their disease pathology. And I think that does present a very unique educational opportunity for our trainees. Allows them to be really well versed in the pathological implications that having all these multiple comorbidities means for anesthetic care, and becoming readily adaptable to take on high-risk cases, because sometimes they'll do so without the liberty to even have time to optimize the patients because of the urgency to do these cases. I think we'd all agree, that the first year of anesthesiology residency, no matter where you do residency, is basically the steepest learning curve that you'll ever encounter in your professional lives. But what I find with our Monty residents is that as opposed to seeing that as daunting, I think our residents really come to see that as empowering. When an intern or a CA1, they work with a CA2 who's just like crushing it, it's inspiring. And, consequently, that inspires their motivation to tackle that steep learning curve, knowing that there's this attainable goal, as evidenced by the quality of our senior residents. And that motivation, it becomes contagious, and, it helps to create this environment of inquiry. And I think that's really needed in an academic medicine program for it to succeed. When we see residents that are thirsty for knowledge and, adamant about engaging in complex cases, I'll find that backup call residents will come in on the weekend, even if they're not needed, just because they heard that a complex case was going on. So those are things that even energize the faculty. So I think that's, part of the things that I'm really proud of. We have a great case mix, but we are not a trauma hospital. There are opportunities to do electives over at Jacobi Hospital. It's kind of hit or miss, actually, how much trauma you really see there. And for that reason, it's not necessarily the most popular rotation to go about. And I'm also of the belief that our OB rotation itself is almost akin to a trauma rotation, just by virtue of how much massive transfusion protocols we do. There's that element. I'd say in terms of what, we could probably improve about ourselves, I would probably say it's like our evaluation processes where, our faculty do give feedback, but I'm finding that it does trail off once we've established that the residents are more or less able to work with conditional independence, sort of like a plateauing effect. So for instance, even our chiefs, Lucas, please don't tell them how many evaluations you've gotten since July, because we know that Lucas is awesome, and but training doesn't end at the CA3 year, and it's a year for refinement of your skills, so in that vein, we are kind of pursuing a more automated evaluation system where it's going to pair resident faculty pairs based on their daily assignments, so that it will generate an automatic evaluation, because otherwise faculty had to just go in and do an on-demand evaluation, and they had to be motivated to do so. So hopefully we don't have to go to the point of like a mandate or punishing faculty for anything like that. But it's just very important in an academic center that we make sure that everyone's getting evaluated.
Thank you so much. I think it was very interesting to hear all of your strengths and what you deem areas that could be improved. Thank you for being transparent. I'll now pass it on to Joanna for the next question.
Thank you all again. It was really nice to hear how passionate you guys all are about your respective programs and each other's programs. I feel like that's huge and is kind of very specific to anesthesia. My next question for you is, what does your program value most in an applicant? Dr. Abramowicz, if you want to kickstart this one.
This is a very good question. And so I think, it cuts to the core of that whole broken recruitment system. How do you get people? We value people that want to be here. But how do you relay that? It's not that easy. And so essentially we use surrogate markers for the likelihood of success in a place which I described is pretty chaotic, especially in the summer. And so we want people who like to have fun, who know how to decompress, who are pretty social, and are not afraid to just experience very maybe intense moments in the professional sphere. And I'm talking about, encountering death early on and sick children who have gory injuries and things like that, but also people who have had some work experience, because we find that it prepares them very well for maybe the specifics of this institution, which has its own challenges. About 20 years ago, it was a county hospital, and we haven't completely recovered from it. And there were no Roosevelts here, if you get my drift. So, yeah. And also talking about, the patient population. When I came here from the Bronx, as Eric mentioned, we worked together for a time. I really thought this was going to be like a refined practice, Westchester County, one of the wealthiest counties in the nation. And it turns out that the catchment area of this hospital is 7 counties north of here. So it is a very rural practice. And I was shocked at the lack of access to care that New York State residents experience outside of big cities. And this is pretty shocking. And it still shocks me. Today, I took care all day. That's why I'm still in scrubs, of a patient who arrived with a brain tumor the size literally of a grapefruit. Now, that is New York State. And, you would think that that's third world kind of stuff, but it's not the case. So access is a problem. Maybe, Janvi, can I ask you, because I think it's really important, we have changed tremendously our PGY 1 year. And it is, I think, a very strong year in terms of the mix of what's required and the mix of what is anesthesia related. Maybe you want to comment? I know it's only been 2 months, but.
Yeah, so far I've been able to do both a mix of anesthesia related electives. So I did a QI elective about a month ago, and I was able to get exposure with the operating room and what it means to, develop a QI project. But I've also done a handful of floor-based rotations, and I'm currently doing cardiology consults. So next, I'm moving into a POCUS rotation. So I'll be, again, in the anesthesia side of things. So there's a lot of variability, which I really appreciate. And it's getting me an early exposure to the anesthesia faculty and everyone here at Westchester. But it's nice to have that.
Thank you both. Dr. Romanelli, do you want to answer what does your program value most in an applicant?
For me, I think it's really all about collegiality. You can have all the smarts in the world, but if you're an unpleasant person, or you're found to be undependable, or even if you're a really poor communicator, or someone who thinks they know everything and doesn't incorporate faculty feedback into your practice, it doesn't really translate well into this field, because it's a very social it's a social field in essence. You are continuously collaborating with your surgical colleagues, with nursing, with your technicians, and that goes a long way to me. So I'd say personability, your professionalism, courtesy, those are the things that go a long way for me. I'm actually really thankful to Dr. Mahoney, because he runs this podcast with himself and another program director. And I forgot if it was him who said it, but he reminded me in the applications that he said, actually, there's gold to be found in the comments section from your med school clerkships. And that completely resonated with me, because, that's where they're going to say, whether or not this was a person who was a team player, who was, dependable, professional, courteous, had good rapport with patients and their families. So it's probably the first place I'm going to be going, honestly, because we're blinding to a lot of different things, at least when we do get our applications. So that's going to be a treasure trove, I think. I'll also just mention, but we do actively seek out folks who do have that kind of mission for taking care of underserved populations. And that's really important to us.
Great, thank you. Dr. Mahoney?
Well, Dr. Abrams and Dr. Pentiala are supervising all of our residents as chiefs. So maybe first they can say the impression they get from what we look for in applicants based on who they're managing as chiefs this year.
I would say it's an eclectic group of people, but underlying all the diversity is a group of people that really care for one another and a group of people that are hardworking. I think, so many people have amazing test scores and awesome CVs on their application, but it really comes down to, are we going to get along at 3 a.m. when we're on call taking care of a patient? Or are you going to work hard and put in the work to make that difference or make the program better? And I think one underlying theme of all the residents in our program is everyone puts in that extra bit of effort to make the program better. And because of that, there's this intra-department camaraderie that I think is probably, you'd be hard pressed to find elsewhere.
So people make organizations. An organization isn't just a flow chart with different roles. The people that you bring in, what you bring to the table, who you are as a unique individual, will dramatically alter the context everyone else works. And I think about that. I think about some big personalities that came through. And like, if that person wasn't part of this program, it would just be a different place. And I take that really seriously as we're looking at applicants. And I'm really interested to see people who have backgrounds that bring a lot to the table. Dr. Abramowicz actually said something, if you had a job, actually there were like 3 positive prognostic indicators I see in applications. This isn't exclusive, not only people who have these are going to be good, but if you've had experience in a job, it does help the transition to what for some people is like the first real full-time job. People who have been involved in team sports, because being in the OR or in the perioperative environment is a team sport. I love that. And then people who are really committed to things, like that person who became an Eagle Scout. I know it's mad nerdy, but I love my Eagle Scouts, military, stuff like that. Those are just positive prognostic indicators that show people who work well together, know how to take their whole team into account. But mostly, the best thing you can do as an applicant is remind me of one of my current residents that I love. We do that. We have names. Oh, this is such a so-and-so. This is a total Psy. That's a Chelsea. And that's a great thing to hear. People make the culture, and that's really something we value. Our department has the best reputation in this hospital, and we do that by having awesome people who represent us well.
Thank you all so much. I know for me, those are all nice words to hear as I'm going through the application process. So thank you. Chair Preet, you want to go for the next question?
Yes, so our next question is focused on what makes an applicant stand out. So what does your program value the most in an applicant? And Dr. Mahoney, I think you touched on it a little bit, but if you can just elaborate on that a little bit now, we'll start with Dr. Romanelli this time.
Sharon Preet, we just went through that question. If we can do the second, then one right after that.
Oh, sorry. Yes. So the one after that one is, how would you rank research in terms of importance on a residency application? And we can start with Dr. Romanelli.
Sure. I mean, I'm very much of the belief that, research for the sake of, just padding a resume is, almost worthless. If I've definitely interviewed people where I asked them to describe their research, and they really can't tell me much about what they actually were doing. But so I really encourage people that they don't especially when if they've discovered anesthesia late in the cycle, when they're 3rd or 4th year, and they think that they all of a sudden got to get these research projects, do case reports right away. If you're not interested in it, then, find a different avenue for trying to demonstrate your interest. Don't do research for the sake of padding your resume, I would probably say. But then there are people who are, have proclivities towards research, and, I can't say it never goes, it's never to their detriment for sure. But, you want to kind of establish, at least with them, what are their goals within the residency program? Do they want to continue pursuing that research? What are their ultimate goals in terms of even outside of the residency, when they go into actual clinical practice, like, are they looking to become, this like world-class researcher, or, where did, what element of, the clinician field are they really trying to pursue as well? So I think, getting those kind of clarifications is usually helpful to us, because we do have the ability to kind of, harness people's research, goals as well. We have a dedicated research team, we have people who can, help move along IRB approval for residents. So I'd probably just say that's the general gist of it for me.
Thank you. Dr. Abramowicz?
Okay, so that's a very important question, I think, because there's a application race and there is a content race as anesthesiology has become more competitive and we have fewer data points in the application itself. And I'm referring to the many schools don't rank their students, and step one is gone. So people have pivoted and they try very, very hard to make sure that their CVs and their ERAS application reflects an interest in research. Now, I do believe, honestly, as a program director who reads a lot of applications, that if you are true to yourself, it doesn't really matter if you have research or not. We've had people, and I know they've gone to like superior programs who had zero research, but they had longitudinal, very serious involvement in some volunteer activities that were important to them. And I think that is more important than trying at the last minute, try to figure out a way to, as Eric said, pad your resume. So that's one aspect of it. On the other hand, I think as the specialty is changing, and we have to recognize it, I'm the oldest of the program directors here. So I've been through many cycles in the United States. I've been doing this, a long time. I've been here 40 years as an anesthesiologist. So that says something. 39. And so, the specialty, there was a time when there was really no interest in the specialty. And, our journals were thinner and there was very little research coming out from the United States. And that's changing very, very rapidly. And, we welcome and embrace those people that want to be anesthesiologists and researchers. And as far as, our opportunities, you have a project, you will get the time. Up to 6 months as a CA3 is guaranteed. But again, we're not pressuring people into publishing, but some do. And that's about, as I think specific as I can.
Thank you very much. And Dr. Mahoney?
I love people who love research, if that's your thing. It's just important you have a thing, something you're passionate about. Dr. Abramowicz nailed it. If your thing was being the president of a very active student organization, you got really involved, you went to national leadership conferences, that's awesome. That's just as good as research. But I want to see that someone's gotten passionate about something. Dr. Abrams, I don't remember, maybe you had it, I don't remember any research on your application. Did you have a thing you want to talk about?
I had zero research, and I will say that my roommate in medical school took his summers off to do, he was also applying for anesthesia, took summers off to do prostate research because he knew someone published 12 papers, and I don't think it made a difference. So just to second what Dr. Romanelli said, I don't think just doing research for the sake of it is beneficial. For me, just to echo what Dr. Mahoney said, I think it's really important to be passionate about something, to demonstrate that you are really involved in whatever facet of life that is. For me, it was medical illustrations. So I, made study guides and I had my own website, and I worked for First Aid making illustrations. And so even though I had zero research, that was something that allowed me to show my passion through the lens of something that kind of stood out, was a little bit different.
If you open your USMLE First Aid for Step 1, his name is on large font on the inside of the cover as one of the main editors. You've used his diagrams to learn medicine. That's a really cool thing. I liked that. That excited me reading his application. So just show that you're passionate about something. Passion for research, very cool. Love supporting that. We have a scholarship and a track for that. We have a scholarship and a track for teaching. We just want to see that you get excited about something. It's fun to talk about during your interview, and that you're going to bring something to this program and add to what we're doing here and make it better for everybody.
Thank you. I think it was really helpful to hear for the M4s going through the application process about all the different takes on the research. And then for our M1 to M3 attendees, I think it's helpful as they prepare their applications and join different involvements. And I'll pass it back to Joanna now for the next question.
So Dr. Abramowicz touched on this about step one being pass-fail. So my question to you is, what is changing in your evaluation of applicants without this extra metric? And anyone can jump in for this one, because I know Dr. Abramowicz touched on it a little bit.
There's a lot of discussion about this. If you go to the Society for Education Anesthesia website, www.seahq.org, we do have a podcast. We talk about this, different program directors' approaches. I think I'll speak more broadly, not about my approach. I think step two is the new step one. I think you're going to see a lot of that. I don't know what necessarily a really competitive step two score will be right now. I think 250 is probably pretty safe, but I can't be sure. The signals will play a big role. One of my main concerns, I actually hope step two is the new step one. I really hope so, because I gave away my secret. As Dr. Romanelli said, there's gold in those comments. There's a lot to learn from what people say about working with you. I spend a lot of time reading applications. I strongly encourage the other program directors to continue doing what they do, which is not reading them, because I get to find all these great applicants who people might overlook. I think there might be more attention in doing what I'm doing, especially Dr. Abramowicz noted, the dean's letters are increasingly providing less information in terms of the overall rating, ranking, but they're putting the comments in there. If you go to a school that has a dean's letter that separates even out overall rotation grade, they'll have overall rotation grade taking into account the the shelf exam. It's called shelf exam, right? But then they'll have the clinical grade. I love the people with all honors for clinical. I don't care what they got on the shelf. Honors for clinical is great. That's good. Done. You might see more than that. We won't be making step two the new step one unless people are coming from the non-traditional tracks. We do strongly use step scores for non-traditional, non-US ND tracks. Otherwise, we still are going to keep on digging through those comments and looking for some valuable information there.
I'll also mention something that Dr. Abramowicz said in a previous panel that we were in, that also kind of resonated with me as well, was that if you're not presenting a step two score at the time you're submitting your application, that's basically saying to us that okay, you're going to get your act together basically to take your step two, and how are we going to ensure that you're going to do your case logs in the future, essentially, that really. So I imagine, I don't know the data, but I think probably more than 95% of people will have a step two score, but there will probably be a handful of folks who won't, and that'll probably be not in their favor.
So I'll tell you, can I just say something which kind of captivates me, okay? There's a lot of talk about AI, and there are some initiatives that are currently evolving. And one of them is the central application, which has an AI overlay. That's an optional and pilot program this year for more and more anesthesiology programs that originated with the plastic surgery residency program director at Vanderbilt. And he's very passionate about it. And he got a bunch of people to join forces with him. And we are going to, this year, that application is actually attached to many programs, including ours. I decided to join it. Why? Because there is an AI overlay. That application will be read with an AI overlay. Now, I understand this year is going to be read with an AI overlay that comes from plastic surgeries. I don't know how helpful it's going to be. It's going to double the work. But next year, after that pilot project, we can train that software to actually look for characteristics that a given program considers valuable for success. And so I am very hopeful. There's language recognition. You can read PDFs. I am very hopeful that actually the content that you generate by filling out these applications will now become something that is, if not read, then at least analyzed and presented in some format which will give justice to all these years of hard work that you put in as you finally, decide this is the specialty and that's what the rest of my career is going to be. And because I think that at this point, that's my opinion. The system is completely broken. It is crazy. Even with the signals and the geographic preferences, I just analyzed the data of my recruitment and I am really upset about these regional preferences because I am just going to get people who are exclusively from New York and New Jersey and not even Connecticut, because that is part now of New England. And I am mid-Atlantic. Like, who came up with this stuff, And so I just wanted to mention that AI thing as being actually something that maybe, hopefully, will be very helpful. Not this year.
Dr. Abramowicz, you're guessing our next question every single time. Chair Preet, you want to go ahead?
Yes, so with Dr. Abramowicz's segue, our next question is, how will program signaling and regional preferences be used in application considerations at your programs since the new changes have been made to ARIS? And we can start with Dr. Mahoney.
It's really going to change everything. Dr. Abramowicz actually had one of the louder opinions at our national meeting about this. And her opinion focused around the fact that I think that it's being looked at as a strategy to limit the number of applications. I don't think it will limit the number of applications people are putting their money down to make, but it is going to severely limit the number of interviews you get, I believe. Gold will yield the highest chance of getting an interview. Silver, I'm guessing decently high. And then after that, you're probably going to have a very low yield for applications. I have to admit, last year, there were only 5 signals. It did change things for me. I'll give you an example of how things went before the signals and then after. We've traditionally done rolling invites. We've done about 200 interviews a year. I would open ARIS early on, and I would just play like I was flipping through a catalog because it's fun. Oh my God, all these exciting people. And I know what my residents look like. And I could pick 50 people, maybe 60, that I knew were right in my wheelhouse, send them some invites. And then I would just sit on it and wait. When you have 2,000 applications, how do you know who's really interested? And so then I would send out new batches of invites based on who showed interest. The signal system really changed that. I think it went from 50 to 60 up to, I had to hold myself back. I was well over half of my invites sent out right off the bat by utilizing the signals, because the signals were doing something for me that previously I didn't get until I waited for those interest emails. They're saying people are interested. I did still keep room open. Only 5 signals. Maybe you don't hear about my program until later on in the interview trail. I allow for that. There are people who never signaled me, who sent me emails saying they're ranking me number 1, a lot at the end. So I wanted to allow for that. With the silvers, it's not going to be as important to save space for people who didn't send me any signal at all. I'll probably do a little bit of it. So it is going to change things. Don't expect a lot of success outside of your signals. For that reason, I've been telling the people who are rotating through here and some of the students, you might want to play a bit of a conservative game depending on your application. Don't burn all 5 gold signals on your quote unquote reach programs. Some of those reach programs are only going to interview you with a gold signal. There was one program in Boston, it's a major program, and I know that they only interview people who signaled them. There were only 5 signals last year, so that year it would equate to only people who gold signaled them. So be careful. You might want to toss a gold signal to a program you think is a program you can safely match at. That's some advice. Regional preferences, make them. I learned that last year, I would only see the regional preference that applied to my region. You can make 3. So if you, for example, say New England, Mid-Atlantic, and West Coast, that's going to be a lot of people that I interview because a lot of them like to be in those areas. If I would only see Mid-Atlantic. Now, if someone puts no preference, a program director might not read no preference. I won't read no preference. I will read that as 3 preferences, not including my region, which is bad. Otherwise, I'm not going to pay any attention to it. The gold or silver signal would trump that. But I would suggest that you use the regional preferences so that no preference is not inadvertently read by all program directors as, in fact, a preference that's not your region. Maybe other people disagree.
So okay, Eric, you want to comment because you're new and you know it's important to hear what people really feel about this because I have some inside knowledge through the Program Directors Council meetings, and I represent like a no-name program, okay, among all those big gorillas. So I have some insights that I am happy to share, but let me hear what you want to say.
Oh, I was basically just going to say, I mean, from the program director perspective, you have to kind of recall that if you have 15 signals and your personal program that is not receiving a signal, the implication is that you are not in that person's top 15. So, you know, the likelihood of you getting at least the first round batch of interviews is probably considerably less. There's probably, like Dr. Mahoney said, a possibility, you know, if we do, you know, go back into the applicant pool, that you could probably still secure an interview on a later time, especially if you do kind of maybe do one of these kind of finagling moves in terms of, you know, a little email to say, oh, I discovered you late in the game and you're really my first choice or whatnot. But I mean, what I do think ultimately is that the signaling really does buy you a full holistic review of your application. Not to say that we don't review every application in some fashion, but you know, when we get 2,000 applications, where we really focus our attention is going to be on people who actually demonstrate interest.
Thank you, Dr. Abramowicz.
So I will present some data, which you know, no screen sharing, just off the top of my head. Last year, if you signaled and there was a congruent regional preference, your chances of an interview went up 60%. That was with 5 signals. We just have some preliminary data now, because obviously, please understand the AAMC made $120 million in applications last year, but they do not talk to an RMP. And even though there is an upload function, you know, once you match people, you can upload the data into your database, they don't talk to each other. So we don't know what the effect the signals had on actually the success of matching. So the AANCP, the Association of Anesthesiology Program Directors, had a survey. Only 50 programs responded. And the preliminary data is exactly what Brian said, is that signals get you interviews and signals get you positive matches if you are in that program's kind of average makeup. In other words, you have to target those. It's hard to do as a medical student. I know, because I talk to a lot of medical students, and you know, when they show me these lists of programs, I go like, oh my God, what is the common thread here? Like, what they all start with an M, or what is it? You know, so you guys have very little information, and that is also something that has to change, because Frida is full of misinformation. The Residency Explorer draws data from AANC, which is very, very old. And I actually had, you know, program coordinator enter wrong data. So I opened the notice this year. This year, the Residency Explorer has no average steps. They want you to apply and apply and apply and apply. So money keeps coming and coming. So the entry was wrong. There is a drop-down menu. They put NYIT Arkansas. I never had a resident here from Arkansas. Suddenly it became one of my feeder programs. This is the information you guys rely on. They know exactly what's in my program. Why don't they check? Why do I have to have manual data entry 7 times over, etc.? So Doximity sucks. The Explorer has data that's old, definitely not from last year. So you have very few data points. Make this a priority. Visit every website. Drill down. Look at social media. Twitter has a lot of stuff. And, you know, some of it is obviously, you know, fluff. And then, take advantage of the fact that you have advisors. Whoever has an advisor, a specialty advisor, talk to them. There are reputational things that maybe they don't know, how good a fit you are for a program, but they'll tell you who the people are who work there, what their strengths are. And that's how you have to make your decisions. It's going to be a tough year. You are not going to get a lot of interviews. I completely agree with Brian, unless you signal.
Thank you so much for that insight. I know this year is a little bit confusing, so I think it's reassuring to hear this from all of you, all of this information. I'll now pass it to Joanna for the next question.
I want to get the residents more involved in talking about their programs. So we'll go into more specifics about their programs. My first question to you is, what are the didactic schedules like? And is there dedicated time for teaching and learning? If, let's see, Dr. Harley, do you want to start?
Sure, I'd love to. And that's one of the things that's been a moving target, I believe, for the majority of programs, if not all of them, is tending to the specific educational needs of their current residents. So we've recently changed our educational curriculum and schedule to focusing by classes. So our first Thursday of every month would be just for the CA1s. Second Thursday would be for the CA2s, and so on, with the fourth Thursday including all of us in a topic that would be relevant to all of our interests. And I think that's especially important so that you're not going over anesthesia machine basics in a class full of CA2s and 3s who may not benefit as much from that. And so I think in terms of education, it's definitely something that needs to be at the forefront of programs' interests and efforts. And it also shows that a program is listening to its residents as it adapts and changes based on the needs and desires of the residents themselves. And so I think it's definitely an evolving, adapting thing that it takes effort to chase and effort to produce a good product.
I just want to add, this is really important because maybe not everybody is aware of this. We have didactic afternoons. And so that is, for me as program director, I have to deal with the clinical side of these. It is completely clear that Thursday afternoons have to be staffed by, and they do their magic. I don't care what that magic is. Thursday at 2 p.m., everybody gets relieved, right, Jonas?
Absolutely.
You're not allowed to be in the OR. And you must have a very good reason to be in the OR. Nobody's in the OR at 2 o'clock on Thursday.
Correct. It's very protected time. And for the new CA1s starting out in July, of course, they have didactics every afternoon. So it's very much a focus on that steep learning curve, as well as continuing throughout the year that is something that we need to address and continue on working on it. And we do that well as a program to giving us, that protected time relevant to what we need to hear.
Great, thank you. Dr. Smith, are you still on with us? Would you like to answer this question? If not, Dr. Abrams.
Hi, I could talk about education for a very long time. As we alluded to before, it's something that I'm really passionate about. So cut me off if I'm talking for too long. I'll just start off by saying we have such a robust educational curriculum for our residents. So to start, once residents transition from their intern year to CA1 year, we have a whole intern boot camp. So they have lecture twice a day, in the morning before the OR start, and then in the afternoon. So these are all faculty given lectures. All these lectures are recorded and the slides are available for residents to review. And then after that month's up, we have, and during that month as well, we have sim sessions incorporated. So these CA1s are put in situations to help their clinical understanding grow before they're put in that situation in real life. So there's a mixture of lectures, of quizzes, of sim sessions, and things like that. Once that month's over, we have lecture every day of the week, essentially, before the OR starts. So in our hospital, the OR starts at 7:30. So from 6:30 to 7 every morning, we have lecture. So Monday is usually a basic lecture that's incorporated for something that's more elementary for the CA1s or the CA2s, or just a refresher for the upperclassmen. Tuesdays are usually more advanced lectures. Wednesdays are a mix between either a grand rounds, an M&M, or a visiting professor. And Thursdays we call thrilling Thursdays. We have oral board preps, or we have wellness days, or trouble rounds. Attending will talk about an interesting or challenging case. And then Fridays we usually have off from lecture. So we have these lectures essentially 4 days a week, which is really nice to start your day and allows you to reflect on what you learned that morning and see if you can apply it in the OR that day. We also have sim sessions throughout the year for different classes, as we have, like I mentioned, for the CA1s that are just beginning, but we also have more advanced sim sessions for the CA3s that are preparing for their oral boards. In addition to all this, we have a really robust library of educational materials, whether it's lectures, study guides, or just video recordings. And we keep all of that on a Google Drive for our residents to reference whenever they're studying throughout the year. We also have, as Dr. Mahoney alluded to before, whatever you're interested in, there's a track for you to get more involved in. And so one of these tracks is the education track. So last year, myself and Sai were two of the education residents. This year, we have two new residents, and they're responsible for coordinating the lecture schedule with attendings, designing the curriculum so that it's more conducive to resident education and understanding. So maybe we do a week of pulmonary physiology or pathology, and starts with the basic lecture in advance, and then maybe there's a grand rounds about something with a similar topic. And so we really design the curriculum with the students, and obviously our mentors, Dr. Mahoney and the other faculty, advise us and guide us as we're creating this. But it also allows us to work on a lot of other projects that further education of our peers. We learn a lot in the process, and it kind of helps advance our co-residents at the same time. So for example, I worked with Sai on creating these reference guides and study materials for our residents going through their basic, advanced, and ITE exams. I'm working right now with the two current education chairs to actually build medical student education curriculum, so that as the medical students rotate with us on their rotations, they have an established curriculum that involves sim sessions, lectures, and different scenarios to kind of talk through. So there's a tremendous amount of education going on, I would say, throughout the week, throughout the day, and throughout the year.
Thank you so much. I was never going to cut you off. You seem so passionate about that. I wasn't going to cut you off for that. Chairman Free, do you want to go to the next question?
Can I click? My apologies. I had a little technical difficulty.
No worries at all. Shoot.
So education is kind of tackled in a few ways for us. Certainly intraoperative teaching is a big focus, and our mentorship is very strong. So starting off as a CA1, you get some one-on-one time with a couple attendings. And so that's really where a lot of the building blocks are put in place. And during that time, you go through what's called like a drown proofing series of lectures. And so it's targeted on common intraoperative problems that you may encounter early on that you should be prepared for prior to being kind of, more or less on your own or spending some time by yourself in the operating room. And so that really sets the stage for you to kind of take off and to tackle that steep learning curve that I believe Dr. Romanelli was speaking about earlier. As we move on from there, we also have kind of different areas of expertise for each of our attendings, and those are sent out to our residents so they know kind of where they might be able to pick the attending's brain for that day if you're working with this person or that person. Our lecture series, they're protected time and take place on different days of the weeks for our different classes, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, about an hour and a half. And they're kind of tailored to the needs of each year. So CA1 has a lot of focus on the basics of anesthesia and preparation for the basic exam. CA2, you move on to some more advanced topics as you go through your specialty rotations. In CA3, they do a kind of a wide variety of lectures, including some oral board prep. which is great. We get to experience some real scenarios from a couple of our faculty who are oral board examiners. As we go through each of our individual rotations for neuroanesthesia or cardiac anesthesia, there's an important part at the end of the rotation where we are evaluated on our progress and where we need to improve or what we did well on the rotation moving forward. And I think that's it. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And just to switch gears a little bit, now we'd like to ask, how do your programs address residents' mental health and life balance? And Dr. Bensal, would you like to start us off?
Sure. So far I've been doing more so internal medicine. And honestly, all of the senior residents have been super supportive and very, they're willing to listen to, if there's any problems that come up, especially starting off as an intern in July. It was pretty stressful getting, your feet on the ground and learning all of just the basic how a hospital works, especially after having a more than relaxing fourth year. So it was really nice to have supportive seniors between anesthesia and also internal medicine that, were able to help us navigate that and, listen to any complaints or anything that we wanted to, put across. And yeah, I really never felt that I was not heard as an intern at Westchester.
Thank you so much. That's great to hear. Dr. Hurley?
Yeah, so we, through our union as well as our program, we have multiple different avenues for addressing, any kind of support that you need, really. I know mental health is definitely one of the hotter topics currently in our landscape, just, based on history and how we've addressed it previously as, medicine in general. But I feel like we do a really good job of providing the support that we may need or want, regardless of the issue, regardless of whether it's, serious or not so serious or, anything that comes up, because we have these resources available where we can submit concerns anonymously, or we can, we can talk with our attendings or, the chiefs. And we're always available to support each other in terms of academic, personal, anything that's going on in your life we are interested in, and we want to know and want to help with those things, and we do value that highly. And I think that owes a lot to the quality and attributes of our applicants and current residents, because we're all in it together, right? We're all doing the same job. We're all, taking care of patients, but we also need to take care of ourselves, and we all understand that for ourselves and each other. And so, besides the formal processes of getting professional help for things, I think one of the things that we do best is having people who have that interpersonal relationships with each other, who can speak to the issues and oftentimes just listen, because sometimes that's all that needs to happen.
Thank you so much. That was very nicely put. Dr. Smith, would you like to chime in?
Absolutely. So we have a number of ways in which we like to support our residents and our resident wellness. One of our newest initiatives is called the SAFE program. It's the Support and Advocacy Following an Event, SAFE. And what this program really breaks down to is we are anesthesiologists. Oftentimes we are involved in the care of very sick patients at very critical points, and not everyone has a perfect outcome. And so it's a way in which we flag events and ensure that appropriate debrief and learning has occurred after these events, and that support going forward is provided. And so that's something that is being spearheaded by Dr. Fontaine right now. We've just started that. Further, we have the ability to kind of anonymously bring complaints to 2 attending advocates that were elected by our residents. So it's our ombudsperson program. And that is going to be Dr. Jerry Chow and Dr. Melinda Aquino. And so any resident who feels that they have a need or a complaint or a question, they're able to bring it to those 2 privately. And they are willing to escalate that on behalf of the residents. And so that way it provides an avenue for things that might be a little uncomfortable, or you might feel intimidated or kind of held down by a hierarchy of power, not felt empowered to speak out. And then lastly, as a chief resident, I would hope that any of my co-residents would feel comfortable coming to me with any issues they may have or any ways I can support them. We are a bigger program, but we're very close. And we do our best, to get to know each other and to be there for one another. These are challenging years, very rewarding years, but do not be mistaken, they are hard and you need people to get through them. And we do a good job of being a family here.
Thank you so much. And Dr. Abrams?
Wait, before he starts, Dr. Fontaine, who's running that program, I trained her. She's mine. Yeah, she's wonderful, right? Go ahead, Jordan.
I'm probably going to repeat a lot of what Jonas, Lucas, and John V said. But, we have a lot of similar events and resources at our residents' disposal. We have surveys for anonymous feedback where residents can submit things anonymously. We have assigned what we call wellness champions, which is an attending, and we also have wellness chairs along with social chairs that will plan events to help relieve stress. Obviously, these are optional. We don't want to cause anyone any more stress by mandating they go to some event. But we have a lot of events and these dedicated personnel for residents to reach out to should something happen or should they want to talk or vent about maybe a scenario in the OR. And I think what's most powerful about all of the resources that we have is that I know for a fact we've had residents that have had hiccups with mental health or have had needed things for personal days. But the confidentiality that remains within our department, despite us being so close-knit, is something that I think is really meaningful, that we really look out for each other's best interests. And I think part of that is keeping things between whoever you feel comfortable to share it with.
Thank you so much. It's really great to hear how the positive culture atmosphere is all present at each of your different programs. I'll now pass it on to Joanna for some different questions on the field of anesthesiology.
Yeah, as we're closing in on 7:30, we're going to start asking our kind of overall topic questions. So the first one is, how do you see the landscape of the field of anesthesiology changing in the years to come? Dr. Abramowicz, if you want to start with this one.
It's a good one. All right, so right now, interest in fellowships is plummeting because the job market is ridiculous, okay? I mean, you're gonna make money hand over fist, you're gonna work your behind off, but these dollar signs get people extremely excited. And I understand, because when you graduate from med school with so much debt, and there's a prospect that you might actually, put a dent in this very, very quickly, is extremely appealing. So that is not a good thing longer term for the specialty, I believe, because there's, in the background somewhere, what is lurking is competition from mid-level. So, and I believe that that is a fact, because as medicine becomes safer, and we're talking about, look, think about bariatric surgery. They're doing this endoscopically now, okay? So who's going to be giving anesthesia for those cases? And forget colonoscopy. That's like the bane of the existence of a private practitioner to go do endoscopy, and they just turn out, I don't know how many of those in a day. I think my record when I was in private practice briefly was 17 in between 7:30 and 3 p.m. Think about the dollars this generates. This is all going away because of changes in diagnostic procedures, et cetera. So, but that's the landscape right now. Job market is wide open, wide open. You're going to have any job you want. And actually, you're going to get signed up in the very beginning of a CA3 year, if you so desire. So fellowships are, you can have the fellowship you want. Peds, wide open. OB, wide open. RAPM, wide open. There's a little bit more of a competitive tweak to, or streak to pain and cardiac, but I think that's falling into the other category as well. So that's where we are now. And you know what? Young people need to take advantage of it and just step back and think about, life and their longer term goals. I mean, you graduate residency, nobody's super young, and you put in all these years. You want money, you want to enjoy life, go for it, Find the job of your dreams. On the other hand, I'm very worried, as part of the great tsunami, like who's going to take care of me in the middle of the night? Nobody wants to take night call anymore. Nobody wants to be on call on the weekends. Nobody wants to do the hard things. I don't want some locum tenens guy, taking care of me. So there are some challenges. I mean, when it comes to, I think that the health and the foundational strength of the specialty. And I'm not sure how that's going to evolve, but there are some headwinds there.
Dr. Mahoney, do you want to chime in?
Yes, this is a very exciting time in anesthesia. Applications are way up. Why is that? The contracts that are being offered to my residents are eye-popping. They are eye-popping. Dr. Abramowicz is right. People coming out of anesthesia training, they're in the driver's seat. You hear about things like supply and demand and economics. People coming out of training are not in a high enough supply, so they get to set the conditions. When the balance goes back, you might not have jobs that you can take that don't involve call because you need a job. There aren't as many as there are right now out there begging you to come, and you'll have to take call. But I think that there is a downside to the fact that the job market in anesthesia is strictly following these laws of supply and demand. If you become an anesthesiologist, actually the same is actually applying to emergency medicine, so many other specialties, you are going to be the highest paid member of America's working class. You're going to call yourself a professional, but you will be the highest paid member of America's working class. You will be told what to do. You will have a manager. You won't own anything as regards to the workplace. You'll own your home, you'll own a car, but you won't own your practice. You won't own your business. What do I see as a future in anesthesia? I see a bunch of people making a ton of money and being very satisfied with that. And then I see when the downturn comes, there's going to be a lot of us who are a little angry that we're being told what to do all the time, these hospital administrators. Maybe we'll organize. Maybe we're going to start a new professional society and start to get back in the driver's seat. You will be in the driver's seat financially. If you do a fellowship, if you expand your skill set, you can be in the driver's seat by becoming a member of the professional managerial class that I'm a member of. I tell people what to do within the hospital, and it's fun, and I get to do more of what I want to do. But I think it's an exciting future. There could be some labor unrest in medicine. That would be a lot of fun. I think we're taking on new roles. The doctors that existed when your parents were going to the doctor's office don't exist anymore. That doctor's office isn't a doctor's office. It's a multinational corporation's office that employs the doctor who works there and takes marching orders. So it's going to be a very exciting frontier. Save all that money you get from your first job offer, pile it in the bank, don't buy the fancy sports car, save up, get ready to organize. We're going out in the line, people.
All important points to remember. Sounds like my dad talking to me. Dr. Romanelli, would you like to add on to any of that?
Dad, I want to have a beer with him. Sorry.
No worries. Yeah, I mean, I would just definitely echo the comments of Dr. Mahoney and Dr. Abramowicz. I think, as a consequence of the needs of the job market right now, I think it's just really important that residency programs are trying to adequately prepare residents for the needs and what, the roles and responsibilities that these jobs are actually looking for, which in my mind, it's really, they're looking for these jack of all trades who's, are comfortable within multiple anesthesia domains, who can be flexible, adaptable. If the place has, 4+ campuses, that they can go from each campus to campus each day. So, they want people who are going to be flexible and adaptable in that way. So at least, the implication for us is just making sure that we're making everyone comfortable to say, okay, can you handle this complex transplant case or the Pete Scully case that you're going to be managing for the entire shift? And then, maybe the next day you might be jumping over to an outpatient ambulatory center and doing 20 opto cases, back to back to back. So, making sure that people are well suited and, competent and confident to go into these kind of jobs is, something that we're going to have to adequately prepare them for. And the thing is that I think that academic medicine does suffer as a result of this, because we have attrition within our own programs, as people are seeing these more lucrative paychecks, and then especially when we have lower number of people within specialties, like Dr. Abramowicz said, there's implications for the call pools there. The presence of locums is kind of interesting within an academic program, because ideally speaking, residents should be working with faculty members and not with locums. And it kind of just creates this kind of strange environment as well, where, it's like, oh, no, we can't, we have to make sure that we don't assign them with a locum. So it's just, it's just an interesting time to be, practicing right now. But I see, personally at Montefiore, we are in a very good hiring period. And, I'm hoping to see, general improvements as we go on.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And now we have our last question of the night. So what do you think are some of the worst things about anesthesiology? And then to end us on a high note, what do you think is the greatest thing about anesthesiology? And we can start with Dr. Abramowicz.
Okay, that's I should know, right? Okay, so I'll tell you what the greatest thing is. The greatest thing is, I think, professional longevity. It is absolutely the most exciting part of my life. And I have a great life, I have 5 kids and they all do different things. And I could vicariously know about real estate or, teaching middle school or whatever. But I find incredible fulfillment because anesthesia gives me a bird's eye view of everything that evolves and develops in medicine, It is really very exciting. Like nobody in medicine, 10, 15 years after they're out of med school, know as much as we do about everything else. Like you ask a neurosurgeon about an exit procedure, they go like, what? They have no clue. Or like Akrita, like what's that? So that's one. Now, the thing that people don't know about anesthesia when they go into anesthesia is that you are really a part of a large collective. And up until it might be the last 2 years when people have become locums and they think they work, for themselves, you are really subjugated to the needs of your group. And I cannot begin to tell you how I hated the lotteries, summer vacation lottery. Now I don't care because, my kids are grown and I get vacation when I get vacation, it's no problem. But, when you try to figure out your family life and everybody else's kids are off at the same time, that's really tough. And they also tell you what time you go home. You don't know how many times I canceled, my sort of social events because I couldn't just sign out a patient that was bleeding, and I was on the unit 68 of blood that I was transfusing. So that's happened to me multiple times. And, I don't think people think in those categories. And that is something that has to be clearly, I think, stated that it's not a specialty that gives you all the freedom in the world. The surgeon can cancel a day of office. They call and they say, I'm not going to be in. You coming in, or else, your friends and your partners are going to have a very hard time. And so these are the two aspects of it. I still have the excitement. And now when I'm going to finish with you, I'm going to go and see my patient in bed 5 in the ICU to see how she's doing after 8 hours of surgery and 2 liters of blood loss. And that is always going to be exciting to me. But on the other hand, people control me. And they tell me when to go to the bathroom. I wouldn't say that that's like the most glamorous thing in the world.
Thank you so much, Dr. Romanelli.
All right. Maybe this is something that I would think that a lot of people maybe do say. It's like the worst thing I'd probably say is I like to think of anesthesiologists in my department as being like 97% pleasant. Surgery is probably at about like 65%. And, the other 35% you just kind of dread. But, working with your own team and with people you like, again, goes a long way. It's generally that kind of surgery sense of entitlement that kind of gets to me. And I'm generally non-confrontational, but I never stand for a surgeon, who's trying to walk all over me, or particularly if they try to criticize our residents. To me, I'm a dad of 3 girls, so that's like insulting another person's child to me. You just don't do it. I wouldn't openly criticize the 1 hour extra fascia closure after the attending scrubbed out, because we are a teaching hospital. So, you use these things as a teaching lesson about how to manage difficult personalities when you're talking with your residents, and, why it's important to, know that you shouldn't think that you can't speak up because, the surgeon perhaps has created this impression that there's a hierarchy. No, you should flatten the hierarchy because that is where adverse events happen. And, don't let production pressures, affect your ability to obtain a full pre-op, give good postoperative handoff. They're going to tell you, they're going to want to, go back to the OR immediately and, make sure our turnover time is 20 minutes, but, you do what is best for the patient ultimately. The greatest things I probably say, in initially discovering anesthesia myself, I was really always drawn to the fact that it did intersect with all these other disciplines, especially, other surgical disciplines and then critical care and pain management. I'm very much a dabbler. I really like a little bit of everything. And so it allowed me to keep my options open throughout residency and continue dabbling in that way, knowing that if you do subspecialize and do a fellowship, it doesn't define you or pigeonhole you unless you actually demand that it does. And like Dr. Abramowicz said, the reward of a life in academics. I had a great experience as a resident here. Now being a clinical educator, it's my chance to pay that forward. It's the most rewarding thing I do aside from being a father myself. So I do think the residents, even though I'm kind of close in age to them, I think of them as my kids also. I'm getting to the point where I'm more frequently able to turn to the other attending who's working with me on L&D and be like, you remember when I took you for your first epidural? But now, the training wheels are off and they're passing the torch to a new generation of learners. It's very rewarding. Thanks.
Thank you so much. Dr. Mahoney?
So nice. I get to go last. Thank you. I will tell you people complain about the most. You hear it from the faculty, you hear it from the residents. You don't have control over your life. This is not shift work. Dr. Abramowicz referred to it. It does play into things like vacation, but probably the number one thing people don't like about anesthesia, you don't know when you're going home. You don't know. Surgeons take long. There's an add-on. That bothers people a lot. We've made a lot of changes based on feedback to give as much predictability as possible, but we can only make it as predictable as we can. The hospital always has a couple of tricks up its sleeves. I remember when I was a resident, I had this saying I used to say to people, the hospital is a voracious monster, and the only thing that satisfies its appetite are the best years of young people's lives. You're going to feel that way sometimes in residency. That being said, there is a field of medicine that's shift work. It's called emergency medicine. I just read an article today saying that this shift work, which is what everyone says they want, has a burnout rate of over 60% across all EM physicians. So yes, we don't control it, but we ain't getting burnt out. And why aren't we getting burnt out? Yeah, of course, we all would like to clock out at 4 p.m. reliably every day, go to happy hour, do everything we want to do, have vacation when we want. But our job is fun. It's really fun. I think there's like hundreds of people watching. Maybe you guys have a number. I am guessing a lot of you are here watching us today because you decided to go into anesthesiology because maybe you had a clinical experience like this. Things were chugging along fine. Surgeons sitting there doing their thing, acting like they're the star of the show, and something went wrong. And all of a sudden, this person who's occupying very little attention or space in the operating room springs into action. And this surgeon with this big loud voice, you realize, well, that is not the most competent person in the room. This quiet person from behind the curtain has been saying nothing, being very modest, but they are clearly the most competent person in this room right now. Surgeon, step aside. This guy, gal, in our program, it's usually a gal, is going to save a life right now. And you realized, I want to be that like quiet ninja lurking around who will spring into action, know how to save a life, and you become that. Like, I am that. I was like this dorky, nerdy, awkward kid, and
You still are.
I am, but I'm kind of a badass. And it's really great to leave training and know that you have a skill set that can save a life. My mother-in-law calls and says she has the sniffles, and I say, get back to me when you're trying to die. I'll take care of you then. So there's nothing more fulfilling, and multiple times through your residency, constantly, you will have the opportunity to sweep in, save a life, save a surgeon, save a colleague. There's nothing more rewarding. And you do it around, Dr. Romanelli said, every person in the hospital. You're going to save the life of a cardiologist, save the life of a gastroenterologist. You'll be saving a lot of obstetricians' patients' lives. A lot of them, they will try to kill them constantly. And you do it all over the place. And it's great. It doesn't get old. That's why, despite the lack of control over our lives, we aren't burning out very much. Thank you.
To tell you that one of our residents, I was on my way to work, my phone exploded. People were telling me like, Pete did a cricothyroidotomy yesterday in the unit. He got there before the trauma surgeon and he actually saved a life. This was a post-operative complication. So think about it. CA2. I called him and I said, please don't let this make your head swell, but it is a very big.
Thank you so much for those answers. I know myself and many of the MFords here are feeling reinvigorated as we apply for anesthesiology this year. Such great answers. And now we can move towards our closing. So again, a huge shout out to Dr. Abramowicz, Dr. Mahoney, and Dr. Romanelli for speaking with us tonight and sharing such valuable insight about all of your programs. An additional thank you to all of their residents for joining us tonight as well. I hope those who tuned in learned as much as we did about each of these unique programs. This is the second panel in our series. Look out for emails in the next few weeks for our final panel. Again, thank you very much to all the program directors for taking time out of their busy schedules. Have a great rest of your night. Thank you for coming, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much. I was going to give a conclusion at the end there, but Sharon Preet, you basically said exactly what I wanted to say, so thank you for that.
Oh, sorry, I didn't realize I had
it's okay.
Oh, gotcha. Okay. Are we still live?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
So maybe we shouldn't debrief now, but we will debrief soon. Thanks, guys, for
all right. Thank you.